This is another expose on the culture of death that I've called our culture of death. I'm going to piggyback on an interview that was done this morning that I heard on CBC, Robert Enright, the Sunday edition, interviewing an artist in Canada called Edward Burtynsky. He calls himself a photographer, which he is because he clicks pictures. And people, my feeling about photography, the whole idea of photography and art is an interesting subject all on its own. You got to have a decent finger to become a photographer. Like Chuck Close has said, who does take photographs? He said, it's the easiest medium to use as an art medium and the most difficult one to have a vision in. And I think that Burtynsky actually has overcome the burden of proof as far as the Chuck Close version of what makes a good photographer or what makes photography art. He has produced a body of work that highlight landscapes, industrial ruined landscapes. Now I'm going to let Enright introduce him. You can hear what Enright has to say before, and I'm going to express some of my irritation again with these people because they're frauds. Burtynsky is a fraud. I'm going to say he's a fraud from the level that as an artist at our time during the age of fission, not to mention the greatest environmental catastrophe in the history of breathing human beings in the last 6,000 years of recorded history, not to once mention the catastrophe called Fukushima or Chernobyl or any other of the nuclear sites like Hanford and all the footage that exists of early Greenpeace. The early Greenpeacers were phenomenal in their fight against the nuclear criminal syndicate. There is footage of barrels of nuclear waste being thrown into the Atlantic at some undisclosed position, and these barrels of radioactive materials are disintegrating into the oceans, and the early Greenpeacers were fabulous. And now we have come into a framework of our culture that is highlighted by these people like Edward Burtynsky, who cannot open his mouth on the greatest catastrophe, even though he's recognized in his photographs, as you will hear in the introduction, documenting the destruction of the landscape through the industrial, the very visible industrial destruction that has occurred over the last 100 years, and more likely in the last 30, 40 years. The Athabasca oil sands, the devastating beaches in Bangladesh of boats being dismantled, huge container ships being beached on the beaches of Bangladesh and people dismantling them. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. And what I'm going to comment, I'll let you hear what he says, and then I'll give my take on why this person is such a smokescreen, such a feel-good smokescreen for everyone to keep on going. And I ordinarily wouldn't comment on someone if they're not in the limelight, if they don't have a position to open their mouth and make a difference to people, even in terms of taking something seriously, because as a member of the Order of Canada or officer of the Order of Canada, people should listen to an officer of the Order of Canada because you have achieved not just notoriety, but credibility. And for a person like that to be able to come out and voice something that makes us feel they're on our side, fighting on our side, not just part of the winning team who keep getting honors, and you'll hear all the bestowment of honors on this person, and he can't open his mouth. And my challenge still would be to this Burtynsky to actually open his mouth on behalf of all life on this planet, which he hasn't done, and which he will not do. Because like I've said, the narcissism in these people is so extreme, and the way they sound, listen to him. He sounds like some sort of bureaucratic or some kind of accountant. There's nothing wrong. I admire accountants who know what they're doing, but not as an artist. Not as an artist. You don't come across like some sort of paper-pushing bureaucrat in your presentation as an artist, a passionate person. Oh no, well, I'm very removed. I'm very neutral. And I'll comment on this neutrality, but let's listen to the introduction before I get on too far.
Edward Burtynsky's art is awesome in the old-fashioned sense of the word. that is capable of inspiring awe in its beholder. His huge photos of dams, mines, oil refineries, quarries, and oil sands operations capture landscapes altered on a mind-boggling scale, dwarfing the humans and the machines that create them and work inside them. His lens is attuned to the compelling symmetries of massive industrial sites, the striking, unexpected slashes of color in rivers of mining tailings, and the precise patterns of new cars fanning across a sprawling parking lot. But for the average person in our industrialized consumer society, looking at a Burtynsky photo is somewhat like a squeamish meat eater walking into an abattoir. They're a brutally beautiful acknowledgement that every gleaming skyscraper, every sleek car or aircraft, and the sculptural curves of a highway interchange are made possible by ripping open the earth and gouging raw materials and energy out of it. At the same time, Burtynsky's photos are not polemics or jeremiads. They're documents of an industrial age and a way of life defined by consumption. His work has been featured in magazines like the National Geographic and in dozens of exhibitions, and has been the subject of the award-winning documentaries Manufactured Landscapes and Watermark. He is an officer of the Order of Canada and has received a raft of honorary degrees. Most recently, he won the Governor General's Award for Artistic Achievement in the Visual Arts.
$25,000.
The new book of his photography is an overview, really, of his 35-year career. It's called Edward Burtynsky, Essential Elements. It's curated by William A. Ewing, and Edward Burtynsky is my guest this morning in our studio in Toronto. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Welcome back.
It's great to be
It's
here.
been a while.
Yes.
What do you mean by essential elements?
I'll let you hear a little bit more of him, but I'm going to pause. And this is going to be a more difficult compilation because I have to splice things together. He says a few things, but I'm going to center on one specific aspect on Bangladesh that really, really irked me. But you will hear him in his own voice for a little bit. I'm going to pause. My first comment is on the introduction, what you have just heard. And listen, I'll replay this briefly.
At the same time, Burtynsky's photos are not polemics or jeremiads. They're documents of an industrial age and a way of life defined by consumption.
All right, just what he's introducing him as is a chronicler. He's just a chronicler, which is fine. He's a chronicler. He's like in Rome while it's burning. Somebody's sitting on a window ledge watching everything burn and people being raped and killed and murdered, and he's chronicling this. He's not a polemic. He's not making a tack in this work, or neither is he a Jeremite. Oh, yes, you're not lamenting something here. It's just there. It just happens to be there, and it's being destroyed. So this is very crucial. This is very crucial because we have been driven into this very narrow, it's like the cows that are being driven into this very narrow path they go through one by one into the wagons where you're just chronicling. How can you just chronicle the destruction? For whom are you chronicling this destruction anyway? For the people you think are going to be left, of which you're going to be part of this winning team who gets all the honors, you're going to be left. So you're going to stand on the sidelines. This is very important, people. This is very important, that people that go into the war zones and take photographs, and the reason they do that is because they can go in, oh, we're just chronicling, and then they take off. Well, I'm glad I can leave. I'm glad I can leave. I can go into the war zones where people are being maimed, murdered, killed. Everything is topsy-turvy. You take your photographs and then you take off. I know several of these photographers. They work for Magnum, that huge outfit, that photography outfit. I know these types. They're in there pretending to be, I don't know, providing a service, the information, and going in there. And I can't imagine seeing people suffering, dying, going in and leaving. That's all I'm saying. Okay, let me pause. I will attach this interview, a link to this interview on CBC Canada with this fellow. And I'm going to now just play a segment because I don't want to go through this whole thing. It just is very upsetting how this guy speaks about the topics that he chooses to photograph and his landscapes from a purely aesthetic point of view. The way he is approaching this, the way he's able to go into a destroyed landscape like Athabasca or the tailings, the tailing ponds in mines or rivers that are running red because of the pollution in them, or the enormous scale change of landscapes like the dams in China, or the factories that people are in there, in like tens of thousands of people confined to a space working. He photographs it, and he reflects on it as a kind of, like I said, a documentation. And to me personally, the way I perceive this, no matter how he refers to his photographs actually as paintings in a sense, they are, or they're seen almost as paintings. They're not paintings, people. Photographs are actually imitations of paintings. The paintings came first. It's not the other way around. A lot of people miss this. The paintings come first. And they modeled a machine called a camera after making a painting. Why do you think they're all rectangular like that? Why do they make a machine that represents a painting? Think about it. Anyway. So he's referring to his imagery as a kind of chronicling. The way almost I see the medical experiments during the Nazi era in the camps, where doctors used patients, or they used people, they weren't patients, they used people to experiment. And I see this very much without the appropriate or the right commentary attached to it. He is trying to remove himself very cleverly. He is a very successful photographer, and he's writing some kind of acceptable behavior within the framework of never get affected by anything. And I'm going to just play this little clip, and you can hear the whole thing, how he talks, like I say, a dysfunctional individual in the midst of the destruction. Listen to this.
Are there images, photographs you've taken that, I don't say keep you awake at night, but
why not?
Linger
Why not?
in your conscience, in your consciousness, in a negative way?
Well, what I saw, this still haunts me. What I saw in Bangladesh,
Shipwrecking.
the breaking of these big oil tankers, and they had nothing but flip flops and a cutting torch and a shovel. That's basically the tools that they were working with, and to see that landscape and to see what in a way, these ships, were the things that allowed us to have oil and to be able to lead the lives we lead, to fly where we fly, and to drive where we drive, and to heat our homes.
He drives.
So this oil, has to come by these ships, the Middle Eastern oil, and now these ships are being broken, and you look inside them, and they're full of sludge, and they've got asbestos everywhere, and the marine paint on the hull they're cutting those hulls, and that smoke is going right in their face, and I know it's carcinogenic, and I know what asbestos does, and they're burning this sludge on the beach, and it was such a violated landscape. That beach was once a fishing village, and now it's the most polluted place, and life was cheap. When I was there, people were dying regularly, and people were losing their arms, and it was just the most unsafe working place on the planet.
How do you respond, or how do you react if politics intrudes on the art? For example, we're all now having arguments about pipelines. Is it possible?
All right. I'm going to leave it right here. You can listen to. I can't stand listening to this guy. What I want to say is he is documenting monumental destruction. He's just referred to a place called Bangladesh, where they just beach these huge ocean-going cargo ships, and they're dismantled by people in flip-flops, and they're dying left, right, and center. And he knows this. Has he, as a person of conscience, not just as a chronicler, I just walk away from it. You see, it doesn't work anymore. This, for me, this notion, the culture of death, presents to us people that just chronicle the destruction. It has never, the value, the art that is valuable to us is made by people with a conscience. And he is stepping away from this. And all I want to say is, has he come out as this great award winner person of brilliance? Has he said, which as far as I'm concerned is essential in producing valuable work to whatever that might mean in this genre of art. Let him be an artist if he thinks he is with his clicking and stuff. Has he come out and said, for example, I am going to radically change my life after this experience? No, he lives in the city, drives his big cars and flies in airplanes, all that stuff. Or let him do that, fine. And I'm not going to criticize anybody other than when they are held up as our icons of some sort with Governor General awards, the BMEs that the Queen gives to the people that have value to this culture. Has he come out and said, every nickel that I make on these photographs will be going back into this community that I photographed? Has he said this? Has he said that, okay, take your expenses. If you want to be, take your expenses out of your trip. So you spent $10, $12, $15,000 on going, setting up, doing your work there. Has he said, and the photographs that he sells, these are large images, 6 feet by 5 feet or 4 feet by 6 feet. They're very large images and they sell for $10, $15, $20, $25,000. Multiples. He's making hundreds of thousands of dollars on this work. Has he said, I will contribute because this particular situation of desperate people dying, as he admits, has he said, I will contribute this money to this community? No, he hasn't. So as far as I know, if I am wrong, I will drastically change my attitude. But not like 5% or 10%. Has he contributed all the proceeds from these photographs to the community that he photographed, that he used? Of course not. And this is all in all, this is in keeping with what I'm saying. People who are held up as the conscience, he says, oh no, I'm not doing any kind of polemics or Jeremiads on, lamenting. I'm not attacking anybody. Well, he should be attacking. He should be attacking. You do not step back, because if he was attacking, they would never give him a Governor General's awards. And we're left on our own again here. Somebody that has a voice, and I don't attack the people that are driving their big, huge SUVs. Well, you know what? I have my own issues. I have to change my life. But I do attack the people that have a public voice. And I'm no longer going to stay by. The way I have not stood by anyone, the way I talk about Bowie and the Stones and the Flintstones, yeah, Fred and Barney, all the people that are out there being held up as our icons in this culture are contributing to this feeling of complicity. They're complicit. Even if somewhere in the back of his mind, does he sleep? As Enright says, can you sleep after having seen this? Oh yeah, I'm just a chronicler. I had to make this video. I had to do this, and I will attach, and you can listen to this this bureaucrat, this paper pusher, talk about it. And he can do whatever he wants. He can be the person he is. We all have to live with ourselves. But this is a person of notoriety, of such. Not only has he been back once, he's been interviewed on this program several or even many times. It's like we can't find anybody else. We just want to find this amazing person, yeah, held up, and kids are supposedly emulating him, and they go to art schools and they're fed this kind of what is that? What is it? This is not the art that I attach myself to. I'm attached to the work that makes a difference, that makes us feel the gravity of a situation, not just as a chronicler, but as somebody who defends the work. And he's not defending the work. And as a final note, I would be remiss within the struggles that we face to expose the catastrophe that is called Fukushima, the silent, invisible catastrophe, the silent destroyer of worlds, Fukushima, the destroyer of worlds, and a person of such magnificence as an artist. How could he miss Fukushima? Somebody who chronicles, who is a chronicler. Fine, you be the chronicler, Edward Burtynsky. You chronicle. How could you have missed this monumental, this absolutely epic situation we are in with the destruction of the oceans on our planet and all life under threat, with your pathetic little ponds flowing red? This is times 1,000 what we're facing. We're facing times 1,000 what you think you're chronicling as Step back. Make no mistake, I'm brilliant. I have an Officer of Canada award. Listen to me, and you can't open your mouth on the most incredible experience that you will ever have in your life. It dwarfs everything you've done before, and you can't go and take a picture and defend the work on something like Fukushima. Of course, you would never go into Fukushima because you know how dangerous it is to go in there, because you're not going to live more than 5 years after you've been there. He knows it. So that's just, I almost forgot to just sort of put this in, that he's got no interest in actually exposing that event that would actually shut the door on all of his activities, and his narcissism prevents him, because he's not on our side. He's not on anybody's side. He's on what he believes to be his side, but you know what? We're all screwed. I mean, we are so fucked by all of this, this silence among the icons that are being interviewed over and over by the end rights of this planet. It is just so frustrating when I hear this. And people can do whatever the hell they want to do. Paint a picture, take a photograph, throw sticks and feathers on the floor, hang your ass out the window and make a statement about anything, and you call it art. Well, it's not art. It's just being spectacle. You're just being a spectacle, and he fits into the whole spectacle. You see, I am so frustrated and angry with this kind of presentation. Anyway, hang in there.